Will CJ Stroud start Saturday if he is healthy? An update on the health of Sevyn Banks and Harry Miller, as well as why the college football playoff expansion vote was put on hold. All that and more in this live episode of Locked On Buckeyes.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and we are live on Facebook and, I keep saying Facebook, live on YouTube, Locked On Buckeyes on the YouTube and Twitter once again. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07, and oh man, we have so much to get into today. On this past Saturday evening, yes, it is weird to state that Saturday's game against the Akron Zips was in prime time. But this Saturday evening, we saw CJ Stroud not start his first game of this season. Kyle McCord, true freshman quarterback, got the start along with Jack Miller III taking over the reins as a quarterback in this game in the second half. CJ Stroud's health has been something that has been on the forefront that we have all been looking at and wondering, CJ, are you okay? CJ, how hurt is your arm? Ryan Day, have you guys known about this injury and put him out there when he is not healthy enough to play? It all came down to this week being an Akron week, being in kind of the last ramp-up game before the rest of the season, which is the rest of the games are Big Ten football opponents. CJ Stroud didn't start last game. He did start throwing again this past Sunday, looks to start practicing on Tuesday, and all roads are leading to CJ Stroud once again starting for your Ohio State Buckeyes. Many people out there have been very, very critical about CJ Stroud, have been very, very critical about some of the plays that have been called, have been very, very critical about the rotations and what players and how many players are playing in each and every game. However, when you look at last week's game, nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, you may find somebody, I wonder how they can do this. You look and see how many guys played in the Akron game. When you play a team like that, when you play a team you're supposed to blow out, you're going to get a lot more guys that haven't played on the field just yet playing in that game. So you saw guys like Evan Pryor, true freshman running back, score his first touchdown of his collegiate career, Ohio State football playing career. You saw guys, DeMario McCall in quite a few plays on defense. You saw Still Chambers, who continues to impress a lot of us on defense at linebacker, lead the linebackers in tackles in that game, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. There is going to be a lot of things going on about who plays, and I don't think anybody can complain about the amount of guys that played in that game. CJ Stroud's health is number one. It's at the forefront of everybody's mind, and it's why Ryan Day, Corey Dennis, Kevin Wilson, and all the offensive coaches, they all have to answer questions. They will get fielded questions about CJ Stroud and his health. I don't believe, based off some things that Ryan Day said in his presser on Monday, that Kyle McCord is ready right now. He is going to put as much thought into replacing CJ Stroud once he is back starting for this team as he did Ryan Day is. He's going to do that just like he did at the beginning of the season or a couple weeks ago. I firmly believe when you have your starter, unless he's playing atrocious football, unless he's playing football that nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, thinks a starting quarterback should play and should have those plays out there that really make him look like he is not the guy. Unless that's the case, You keep him out there and you keep playing with this young man, CJ Stroud. Absolutely keep rolling with him. There are people out there, I know for sure, that will say, well, Kyle McCoy went 13 for 18 over 300 yards. He won an award from the Big Ten because of his performance over the weekend. That's true. That's amazing. Remember the opponent. Remember that sometimes your players, your receivers, will make you look better and will help pad those stats even when you make some bad reads and some bad throws and some throws you should not make. Take away the backwards pass on the first drive. Take away the interception. There are things that Kyle McCord is ready to learn, that needs to learn. Stroud as well. Nobody is exempt from learning anything. However, I am very excited about the future with CJ Stroud back as the starting quarterback. If he is healthy, that's to be determined. But it surely seems like if he's throwing on Sunday and he's back at practice or planning to be back at practice on Tuesday, surely seems like all roads are leading to CJ Stroud starting once again. Does that put fear into opponents like Rutgers, opponents like Maryland, opponents like Penn State, against opponents like the team up north? That's to be determined. Everybody's going to approach this thing and figuring out how to stop CJ Stroud in their own personal way. Their personnel is different. Their base defensive set and look is different, and so on and so forth. But this week off for CJ Stroud, I firmly believe is ideal. It was timed very well. He could sit on the sidelines and learn about some of the throws that maybe he would have made. Maybe he would have made some of the same throws that Kyle McCord or Jack Miller made. Sometimes they were successful, sometimes they were not, and you're able to learn a lot from being on the sidelines. Yes, you can learn things while playing. You can learn things while on the sidelines as well. All roads lead to CJ Stroud starting this week if he is healthy. From one guy who is playing to get back onto the field to a guy that played on the field, played in his very first game of the season started his very first game of the season this past week, Mr. Sevyn Banks. Going into this, I always say going into the season, but this is kind of where we are with this team right now and with the health of this team. A lot of people out there are saying going into the season, we expected this, and however, we're not getting the thing that we thought we were going to get. It's unfortunate that sometimes there are players out there, there are people out there that are not getting the thought or the players on the field that we expected. And right now, with Sevyn Banks' health and with Sevyn Banks not starting until this past week, we all got to see and we all get to see exactly what Sevyn Banks is right now. He was hurt. Sevyn Banks himself, he dressed. He didn't play. Well, not just didn't play. He didn't dress. No, he dressed. Wow, I can't read my notes. He dressed but didn't play against Minnesota and Oregon. He played very little against Tulsa. He started against Akron. His first game of the year was him starting that game, and that was partly because Cam Brown, who was the other starting corner on the opposite side of Denzel Burke, Cam Brown did not play, so Sevyn Banks came in to start in that game. According to Pro Football Focus, Sevyn Banks has 67 snaps in 2 games. Here is why, and I've been wondering and very curious about why he was out. Sevyn Banks suffered a knee injury during spring practice. He also suffered a subsequent setback in preseason camp as well. I didn't expect at any time or any point in time that the injuries that were suffered during spring camp were going to linger and maybe lead to another injury. And by leading to another injury, we find that Sevyn Banks and other players are not playing right now. Sevyn Banks looked like a guy last week in last Saturday's game that hadn't got much run this year, that hadn't played very much at all. When you're in his shoes and when you're playing in the way that he is, your first start of the year, yeah, you're going to get picked on. One thing we have learned about Denzel Burke and the way that these coaches and quarterbacks view him as a corner, even though he is a true freshman, they ain't testing that man. They are not testing him. I got a text during last week's game. I think it was in the second quarter, and someone said, "Where is Denzel Burke?" And I said, "Well, he's on the field. It's just nobody throws his way. He's proven that himself in that way early on in the season. You ain't trying to test me. Y'all ain't trying to throw my way." And this person came back and said, "Well, I'm going to need Denzel Burke to play his position and Sevyn Banks's because right now I'm not happy with the way that he is playing." Well, I'm not either. But when you're not getting playing time, when you're recovering from an injury, many people thought he was in the doghouse, but we're getting a lot more information about why he did not play. When you're in his shoes and you're playing in this way, honestly, it makes sense as to why Sevyn Banks looked the way that he did, not just against Tulsa, but also against Akron. He's trying to get his foot under his feet wet, figure out his footing, figure out a whole lot about this particular game and how his body is going to react to the cuts that he made previously, to so many things that go into him playing on the football field. Sevyn Banks look to see a whole lot more of him, and I hope his injury issues and problems this year, for the rest of his playing career are over. Not just Sevyn Banks, but there's another mammoth human being for Ohio State who has not played one game all season, who was expected to be the starting center this year. Harry Miller will be available against Rutgers. He had been away from the team due to some health issues. My one interesting thought about Harry Miller coming back to the team and playing this year, Luke Whippler hasn't looked bad. No, he is the backup center. He has started the first 4 games, but Luke Whippler hasn't looked bad. Actually, the offensive line at times has looked really, really good. There have been times, the Oregon game, where I'm like, gotta fix some things very, very quickly. But Harry Miller himself, if he comes back, I do think it solidifies we're going to see more of a well-oiled machine going forward. A little update on the schedule. Let's look at the schedule here very, very quickly. October the 2nd, this coming Saturday, the 3:30 Eastern kick against Rutgers. The following Saturday is a 12 noon Eastern kickoff against the Maryland Terrapins. The 16th, that Saturday, the Buckeyes are off, and I do believe on the 23rd, I had to get my dates correct. On the 23rd of this month, of October, the next month, Ohio State does go on the road to Bloomington to play the Indiana Hoosiers, and then the following week, they do play Penn State. So let's just say Harry Miller comes back. He starts this week against Rutgers. He starts the following week against Maryland. You're going to have a week off. Now, I know that there's testing and things going on in school, but you're going to have a week off to kind of recover, test your body, see how things are going for you at this time, as well as realize if my body and if I am responding in a way that I believe I should and I believe is good for me right now. Harry Miller coming back. It's exciting. I firmly believe. You think this offensive line has looked good at times or above average at times? Wait till Harry Miller comes back and he goes back to playing the very position that he came to Ohio State to play. He got a bad reputation last year based off his play, and I do think Harry Miller, not knocking him, but when you're playing along on an offensive line with Thayer Mumford, with Nicholas Petit-Frere, with Josh Myers, and with Wyatt Davis, somebody has to be the weakest link. And last year, I believe it was Harry Miller. Going from playing center to left guard, there's different calls. Your footwork is going to be different. Your approach is going to be different. Your assignments are going to be different. You're going to be pulling more as a guard versus a center. So many different details that go from moving from one spot to your left on the offensive line. But Harry Miller going back to the center position, some of you may go back to the Michigan State game from last year where he got thrust into that starting center role. Something to keep in mind about that. We were saying, I don't want Harry Miller to be the center. He didn't find out he was going to be the center until, I believe, 24 hours before the start of that game. And when you haven't snapped in a very, very, very long time, and the first real consistent snaps you're getting are in pregame leading up to the start of that game, you're bound to have one, two, maybe a few snaps that are maybe one's high, maybe one's to the right or to the left, maybe one's too low. You're bound to have that because your hand doesn't have the grip or the feel of the football like it used to. Sevyn Banks update on his injury. Looks like he's going to be a whole lot better. He had a couple injuries. It looks like he's going to be A-okay and back on the field. Harry Miller to be back with the team right now. Will be rejoining the team right now after suffering an injury and some health issues that kept him away from the team through the first 4 weeks of the season. We got a little Stroud. We got a little Harry Miller. We got a little Sevyn Banks. Last but not least, and this next one is something that I have been thinking about for a very, 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 very long time. Any fan of college football has been looking at and thinking about college football expansion. You may not have any deep thoughts about the matter. You may have all the thoughts about this situation. On September 28th, there was supposed to be a vote about expansion and seeing if things are going to move forward with the 12-team format that was proposed, that hit our notifications on our phones and on the Twitter and on the internet and whatever site you look at to get your sports news and to read all the articles. People were expecting the 12-team format to go through. Little did we know, myself, I know some people inside the SEC, they probably knew Texas and Oklahoma would shortly thereafter the announcement coming that there was going to be a possible expansion of the playoff in 2023. Texas and Oklahoma announced they would be leaving the Big 12. Well, initial thoughts, initial rumors were exposed, and then all of a sudden they announced they got the invite from the SEC. Texas and Oklahoma would be going to the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, and would be leaving the Big 12 Conference. The Big 12 ended up adding 4 members. After that, was a BYU, a Cincinnati, a couple other schools as well that were added to the Big 12. So the Big 12 went from having 10 members, losing 2, going down to 8, adding 4. Now, Texas and Oklahoma will not be going to the SEC until I believe 2025 unless they end up spending the money on the buyout to leave the Big 12 conference early. And that puts a big damper. That puts a lot of hesitation by a lot of people that are in the know, that are voting on situations just like this, on if they should have an expansion, if they should vote on what was proposed and put in front of them a few months ago. Part of the reason, here are a few reasons why the playoff expansion vote was put on hold. Will there be a 12-team format? Or will it be an 8-team format? Will it be a 6-team format? Will it be a 16-team format or a 20-team format? Those are all things that are on the table that nobody is on the same page on right now. Some people are, some aren't. So they're saying, we're going to put this bad boy on hold. The multiple TV partners. Now, this is very, very key and interesting because ESPN is in bed, and they are the ones that really they broadcast and they run college football. College football is their baby. The NBA, they don't even do all of the playoff games. TNT does some of them, which is also Turner, who has the NBA TV. And so you're going to have games on them, games in the NBA playoffs split up. You're going to have games in the Major League Baseball playoff split up. You're going to have games in the NFL playoff split up. Multiple TV partners. College football is the only one. College basketball, well, it's primarily CBS, but CBS has a contract with Turner. So therefore, there are going to be multiple TV networks, but it's under one contract. That's 2 companies coming together to help broadcast one of the best sporting events in the US of A. And so multiple TV partners, I firmly think Fox and CBS need to try to find a way to get in rotation. NBC, I think NBC could easily get in rotation. If not broadcast the national championship in one of the playoff games, find a way to get multiple TV broadcast men and find ways to get into all rounds if there is expansion to broadcast more games. You have TBS, you have CBS, you have Fox, you got NBC, and you got ESPN. I know ESPN does not want to give up their rights and everything that goes into them being the main people that focus on this here playoff. But multiple TV partners is amazing, not just for the sport, but also it's going to bring in more money, more commercials, more revenue. And we all know they're expanding for money. And that's the only reason. I know what they say. Oh, we need to have more teams, have more people involved. I don't think it would happen if it wasn't about the bottom line and they were not going to get more money put into their pockets. The number of games is on the table as far as why some people are hesitant to vote on and go through with a 12-team format. 17 games, a potential 17 games for those people that go from game number 1, conference championship game, all the way through the national championship game. Just to put it in comparison, 17 games is the same amount of games that NFL players are playing right now in their regular season. Yes, 17-game regular season for the NFL, and if you go from start to finish, 17 games for college football players. To put it also in perspective, in the state that I live in, the state of Indiana, if you go from week 1 in high school football through the state championship, you're playing 15 games. So you're seeing a little progression. I know Indiana's different. Not every state has the same amount of games that they play in regards to their state tournament. But high school football in Indiana, 15 games if you go from week 1 all the way through to winning your state championship game or playing in it. College football potentially is currently 15. Potentially could go from 15 to 17. NFL regular season, 17-game regular season. So adding games, it happens. I mean, college football has been adding games for a while. That's part of the reason why they're holding off on this vote right now for the CFP expansion. Final schedule with extra games. How does a final schedule work? How are you going to have games when players are in the middle of their finals? Student athlete. I know a lot of people don't like that term, but these individuals, they're students first. They are athletes second. If they don't get their grades, they won't be on the field or on the court playing the sport of their choosing. Automatic bids. When you don't know how many conferences or what teams are going to be in said conferences, you might want to hold off about who's going to have automatic bids if automatic bids is going to be a part of this new format. And that's part of the reason why you can't expand. I mean, you can expand, but it's going to add a whole lot of wrinkle if a conference folds or if you add an automatic bid for a conference that, well, doesn't really deserve an automatic bid. Also, one other reason, so many reasons about holding off on this vote. The Rose Bowl dilemma. Now, many people, I like the Rose Bowl. Many of you love the Rose Bowl. I think the setting is amazing. The day of the year, it's amazing. There's so much around this that has been tradition for not just myself, but football fans, college football fans all around the country, Pac-12 country, Big Ten country specifically. The Rose Bowl dilemma has been huge. The Rose Bowl itself, you're going to have in the Rose Bowl, you're going to have, well, it's on January 1st. You're going to have the parade. You're going to have the setting. You're going to have the time of day. You're going to have the Big 12 and Big 10, the Pac-12 and Big 10 contracts, blah, 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 blah. And the Rose Bowl does not want to move their date, move their game to coincide with the new expansion and the playoff. I firmly understand it, not really upset, but that is also a reason why these people in this room are holding off their vote for the college football playoff expansion. Guys, this has been a fun show. Like I mentioned, we're going to be live every Tuesday evening, every Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and on my personal Twitter page at jstevens07. Give me a follow. We will have a fun time talking Ohio State football. Basketball media days just went through. Basketball season for Ohio State will be starting very, very soon. And I am excited about the future, not just of the football team against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. We're going to get more in depth about them throughout the rest of this week, as well as getting to see what the basketball team does on the basketball court during the upcoming college basketball season.